In an empire built on pagan gods and ancient traditions, one man saw a vision that would change history forever. Constantine the Great, warrior, emperor, and the first to embrace a forbidden faith. From the battlefield to the throne, his story is not just about power, but about the rise of Christianity itself. This is the moment when Rome turned toward a new destiny. Part 1. Constantine before power. The story of Constantine the Great begins not on the battlefield or the throne, but in the turbulence of a Roman world on the brink of collapse. By the end of the 3rd century CE, the Roman Empire was no longer the invincible giant it once had been. Civil wars tore at its heart, barbarian invasions pressed against its borders, and economic crises left provinces weakened and restless. The empire needed stability, leadership, and vision, and into this chaos, in the year 272 CE, a child was born in the provincial city of Naissus, in modern-day Serbia. His name was Flavius Valerius Constantinus, the boy who would one day be remembered as Constantine the Great. The world Constantine was born into. To understand Constantine's rise, we must first understand the world into which he was born. Rome in the late 3rd century was not the Rome of Augustus, nor the Rome of the Colosseum's golden days. It was a fractured state, weakened by what historians call the crisis of the 3rd century. Between 235 and 284 CE, more than 20 emperors rose and fell, many assassinated, others toppled by rival generals. Stability seemed impossible. The empire was also religiously diverse. Pagan traditions still dominated. The worship of Jupiter, Mars, and Apollo filled Rome's temples, but mystery cults, astrology, and Eastern religions were spreading rapidly. Among these small, scattered groups were Christians, who practiced their faith in secrecy, often persecuted by imperial decree. Into this fragile world entered Constantine. His father, Constantius Cleros, was a capable general who would later rise to become Caesar in the West under Emperor Diocletian's reforms. His mother, Helena, was of humble origin, perhaps an innkeeper's daughter, yet she carried with her a deep sympathy for the Christian faith. Though Constantine was raised in the traditions of Rome, his mother's influence planted seeds of a spiritual legacy that would one day transform the empire. Youth and early training. Constantine's childhood was marked not by luxury, but by movement and exposure to the empire's vast military machine. He spent time in Nicomedia, the eastern capital, where he observed the workings of Diocletian's court. There, he witnessed the strict discipline of the tetrarchy, the political system Diocletian had created to preserve order. To senior emperors known as Augusti, and to junior emperors, the Caesars. For young Constantine, this was an education in both politics and survival. The imperial court was filled with intrigue, where alliances shifted quickly and betrayal was commonplace. Yet Constantine thrived, earning respect for his intelligence, charisma, and skill with the sword. He trained as a soldier, fought in campaigns across the empire, and gained a reputation as both courageous and clever. Even in his youth, Constantine understood that power in Rome was never given, it had to be seized. The shadow of persecution. While Constantine grew in strength, Christians across the empire faced one of their darkest trials. Beginning in 303 CE, Diocletian launched what became known as the Great Persecution, the most severe crackdown on Christianity in Roman history. Churches were destroyed, scriptures burned, and Christians ordered to sacrifice to the gods or face imprisonment, torture, and death. Though Constantine himself did not yet openly embrace the Christian faith, he could not have ignored what was happening. His mother's sympathies and his own observations must have shaped his views. Unlike other emperors, Constantine did not see Christians as a threat to Rome's stability, but rather as a community of resilience and faith, one that endured despite the empire's might. This awareness would later influence his most important decisions. But for now, Constantine focused on survival in the dangerous politics of the Tetrarchy, a dangerous political landscape. When Diocletian retired in 305 CE, the carefully balanced system of the Tetrarchy began to unravel. Constantius Chlorus, Constantine's father, was elevated to Augustus in the west. Constantine, however, was left behind in the east, under the watchful eye of Galerius, the new senior emperor there. Some say Galerius kept him almost as a hostage, wary of Constantine's ambition and popularity. But fate would not keep him sidelined for long. In 306 CE, Constantius Chlorus died during a campaign in Britain. The army, fiercely loyal to the family, immediately proclaimed Constantine as emperor. This was an act of defiance against the tetrarchic system, which did not recognize inheritance of power. Constantine was now a usurper in the eyes of many, but he was also a man backed by soldiers who adored him. The stage was set for a series of brutal civil wars that would reshape the Roman world. The character of Constantine. What made Constantine different from other claimants to the throne? Part of the answer lies in his character. Unlike many emperors of his age, Constantine combined military prowess with an unusual sense of vision. He was pragmatic, willing to adapt when others clung to tradition. He understood the importance of symbolism, of shaping not just battles, but beliefs. He was also ambitious, sometimes ruthless, yet capable of patience when strategy demanded it. His early years taught him resilience in the face of uncertainty, and his exposure to both pagan and Christian traditions gave him a broader worldview than many of his rivals. Most importantly, Constantine had begun to see Rome's future, not in its fading pantheon of gods, but in the faith of the persecuted. Whether by conviction or calculation, or perhaps both, he was ready to link his destiny to that of Christianity. Part 2. The Road to Emperor. The year was 306 CE. In the windswept northern city of Ibrasim, modern-day York, the Emperor Constantius Chlorus lay dying. His son, Constantine, had rushed to Britain to join his father's campaign, unaware that destiny was about to fall into his hands. When Constantius passed away, the soldiers who had fought loyally under him lifted Constantine on their shields and proclaimed him emperor. It was a dramatic scene, a son elevated by the will of the legions, not by the laws of Rome. This act defied the Tetrarchy, Diocletian's carefully designed system of 4 rulers. According to its rules, power was not inherited, but assigned by senior emperors. Yet in the reality of the Roman world, loyalty of the army outweighed legality. Constantine was now emperor in the West, but he was not alone. A world of rivals. Constantine's proclamation in 306 did not go unchallenged. At the same time, other ambitious men claimed the imperial throne. Maxentius, son of the former emperor Maximian, declared himself ruler in Rome. Galerius, the senior emperor in the east, refused to recognize Constantine's claim. Civil wars erupted, rival Caesars and Augusti clashing for supremacy. The empire fractured once again, divided among half a dozen rulers. Each claimed legitimacy, each sought total control. And amid this chaos, Constantine proved himself not just another usurper, but a master of survival. Consolidating power in the West, Constantine began by securing his base. In Gaul and Britain, his rule was accepted without much resistance. Thanks to his father's popularity, he presented himself as a capable general, distributing gifts to his troops and ensuring their loyalty. He also adopted policies that gained him support from local elites, reducing certain taxes, protecting cities, and presenting himself as a stabilizer in an age of turmoil. But Constantine was no ordinary commander. He was keenly aware of the power of symbols. Coins minted under his name displayed the image of Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, a deity associated with light, victory, and eternity. By linking himself to Sol, Constantine presented himself as a chosen figure, destined to bring order and prosperity. Later, he would shift this divine association to Christianity, but for now, he kept his image broad, appealing to pagans and Christians alike. The rise of Maxentius. While Constantine consolidated the north, trouble brewed in Italy. Maxentius, the son of Maximian, declared himself emperor in Rome. He was ambitious, ruthless, and determined to make the Eternal City his stronghold. Though his rule began as a popular revolt against the Tetrarchy, Maxentius soon turned into a tyrant, exploiting Rome's wealth and alienating its people. Maxentius posed a direct threat to Constantine's ambitions, yet the two men did not clash immediately. For years, Constantine maneuvered cautiously, strengthening his armies and watching his other rivals Licinius, Severus, and Maximinus Daia fought for dominance. Constantine understood that timing was everything. To strike too soon could spell disaster. To wait, however, could open the door to opportunity. The march on Rome. By 312 CE, the time had come. Constantine marched southward with his army, crossing the Alps and seizing cities loyal to Maxentius. His campaign was swift, precise, and merciful compared to other Roman civil wars. Instead of burning cities or slaughtering civilians, Constantine presented himself as a liberator from Maxentius' tyranny. This earned him the support of the Italian population, who saw him as a preferable ruler. As Constantine approached Rome, Maxentius prepared for battle. Confident in the strength of his forces and the loyalty of the city, Maxentius decided to face his rival outside the capital. Their armies would meet near a bridge crossing the Tiber River, the Milvian Bridge. The vision before battle. On the eve of battle, something extraordinary happened. An event that would echo through history and transform not only Constantine's reign, but the entire Roman world. Ancient sources, including Eusebius, record that Constantine looked to the sky and saw a vision, a shining cross, radiating light above the sun. Alongside it were words, "In hoc signo vinces, in this sign you shall conquer." That night, Constantine dreamed that Christ appeared to him, instructing him to mark his soldiers' shields with the Chiro, the first two letters of Christ's name in Greek. The next morning, his legions carried this symbol of Christianity into battle. Historians debate the details of this vision. Was it a true religious experience, a political strategy to inspire Christian soldiers, or perhaps a blending of Sol Invictus imagery with the Christian cross? Whatever the case, Constantine believed it and acted upon it. The Battle of the Milvian Bridge. On October 28, 312 CE, Constantine's forces clashed with Maxentius' army at the Milvian Bridge. The battle was fierce, but Constantine's troops, inspired by their leader's vision, fought with determination. Maxentius' army, despite superior numbers, was driven back toward the Tiber. In the chaos, Maxentius himself attempted to retreat across a temporary bridge, but the structure collapsed under the weight of fleeing soldiers, plunging him into the river. Dragged down by his armor, Maxentius drowned in the waters of the Tiber. His body was later recovered and paraded through the streets of Rome, a grim warning to all who opposed Constantine. The triumph of Constantine. As Constantine entered Rome, he was greeted not just as a conqueror, but as a savior. The Senate hailed him as Augustus, the undisputed ruler of the Western Roman Empire. Statues were erected, celebrations held, and Constantine's victory was immortalized in triumphal arches and inscriptions. But what set this triumph apart was not merely military success, it was the religious dimension. Constantine credited his victory to the Christian God, not the old Roman deities. This was unprecedented. For centuries, emperors had tied their legitimacy to Jupiter, Mars, or Apollo. Now, Constantine declared that his reign was protected by the God of the Christians. This marked the beginning of a revolution, one that would change the spiritual and political foundations of Rome. Part 3. Rediscovery and Legacy of Pompeii. For more than a millennium and a half, Pompeii lay in silence beneath its blanket of ash. The eruption had sealed the city as though time itself had stopped. Fields grew over the buried ruins. Villages arose nearby, their inhabitants unaware of what lay beneath their feet. To the Romans who survived, Pompeii became a memory, a ghost. Some wrote of it in passing, but the exact location of the city faded from maps. The land around Vesuvius remained fertile, enriched by volcanic soil, and life returned to the region. But Pompeii itself was forgotten. In the Middle Ages, fragments of the buried city were occasionally uncovered. Farmers digging wells or foundations found walls, pottery, or statues, but they did not understand their origin. Many believed these finds were remnants of villas destroyed in ancient earthquakes, not an entire city swallowed by fire and ash. It was not until the Renaissance, when humanists began to revere the ruins of antiquity, that interest in the buried towns slowly grew. Yet, even then, Pompeii remained hidden. The rediscovery began by accident in the 18th century. In 1738, workers digging near the town of Resina struck the remains of Herculaneum. Soon after, in 1748, excavations near a vineyard uncovered another city. At first, the discoveries were treated as curiosities, treasures to be removed and displayed in the royal court of Naples. But as more of Pompeii was revealed, scholars realized they had found something extraordinary. This was not a scattered ruin. This was an entire city, preserved as if frozen in time. Excavations in the 18th and 19th centuries brought both wonder and tragedy. On one hand, they unveiled streets, villas, temples, and frescoes of astonishing beauty. Visitors marveled at the colors that had endured beneath the ash. Mosaics sparkled as though newly made. Everyday objects, jars, lamps, coins, emerged in perfect condition. On the other hand, the methods of early excavators were careless, driven by greed for treasures rather than preservation. Many artifacts were lost or damaged. Skeletons were disturbed without care. Walls crumbled when exposed to air after centuries underground. It was not until the mid-19th century that excavations took a more scientific turn. Giuseppe Fiorelli, appointed director of the works, transformed the approach. He introduced systematic methods, carefully mapping the city and recording its structures. Most famously, he developed the plaster cast technique. By pouring plaster into voids left in the ash, Fiorelli recreated the forms of those who had perished. Suddenly, the people of Pompeii were no longer bones or shadows. They had faces, bodies, expressions. Some covered their mouths against the ash. Some reached for loved ones. Some crouched in despair. These casts gave the dead of Pompeii a haunting voice, reminding the living of their humanity. The rediscovery of Pompeii captivated Europe. Writers, artists, and scholars drew inspiration from the ruins. Visitors came from across the continent, walking the ancient streets, imagining life as it once was. Romantic painters depicted Pompeii as both a place of tragedy and a symbol of beauty preserved by fate. Poets wrote of its stillness, of the eerie sense that its people had been trapped in their final moments. The ruins became a mirror, reflecting both the fragility of human life and the endurance of art and memory. Archaeology in the 20th century brought even more revelations. Excavators uncovered bakeries with ovens still full of bread, taverns with painted menus, and villas with walls covered in frescoes of myth and daily life. The House of the Faun, with its grand mosaics, revealed the wealth of Pompeii's elite. The Villa of the Mysteries displayed stunning frescoes of secret religious rites. In the amphitheater, graffiti and carvings revealed the passions of the crowd. Every stone whispered stories. Every corner offered a window into the Roman world. Herculaneum, too, offered its secrets. Unlike Pompeii, which was buried in ash and pumice, Herculaneum was entombed by surges of volcanic mud and rock that hardened like concrete. This preserved wooden furniture, textiles, even food in astonishing detail. Scrolls from the Villa of the Papyri, though charred, offered glimpses of lost libraries. Skeletons found on the shoreline told of desperate attempts to flee. Together, Pompeii and Herculaneum became twin testimonies to the eruption's fury and its power to preserve today. Pompeii is one of the most visited archaeological sites in the world. Tourists walk its streets, tracing the grooves left by ancient carts. They enter homes where frescoes still glow with color. They step into baths where steam once rose. They sit in the amphitheater where gladiators once fought. And everywhere, they see the shadow of the eruption. The plaster casts remain among the most haunting sights. A dog twisted in agony, its chains still fastened, a child curled against its mother, a man shielding his face. They are not artifacts but people, captured at the edge of life and death. Pompeii's rediscovery reshaped our understanding of Rome. It revealed not only the grandeur of temples and villas, but also the daily life of ordinary citizens. We see their graffiti on walls, their cooking pots, their loaves of bread, their jewelry, their hopes and fears etched in stone. We learn that Romans laughed, loved, quarreled, and dreamed, just as we do. In this way, Pompeii is not just a ruin, but a bridge across centuries, connecting us to those who lived 2,000 years ago. The eruption of Vesuvius also transformed science. Volcanology as a discipline was born in part from the study of this disaster. Modern volcanologists examined the layers of ash and pumice to understand how the eruption unfolded. The writings of Pliny the Younger remained foundational, the earliest surviving eyewitness account of a volcanic eruption. His description of the ash cloud gave birth to the term Plinian eruption, still used today. The lessons of Pompeii remind us that volcanoes are not only destructive, but also essential to understanding the Earth. Yet Pompeii also forces us to confront deeper truths. It is a story of fragility. No matter how advanced, wealthy, or secure a society may feel, nature holds the power to undo it in an instant. The people of Pompeii awoke on that morning with plans, hopes, and routines. By the next dawn, they were gone. Their lives, frozen in ash, remind us that permanence is an illusion. At the same time, Pompeii is a story of endurance. Though the people perished, their world endured. Their art, their architecture, their words on walls, their very bodies survived the centuries. What they could not imagine is that one day, millions would walk their streets again, not as citizens, but as witnesses. In this way, Pompeii transcends tragedy. It becomes memory, legacy, and warning. The closing reflection is perhaps the most haunting. Mount Vesuvius still towers above the Bay of Naples, green with vineyards, peaceful in appearance. Yet beneath its slopes, pressure builds. Scientists know it will erupt again. The question is not if, but when. Modern Naples lies at its foot, home to millions. The story of Pompeii warns us not to grow complacent. The same mountain that buried a city 2,000 years ago remains alive, its power undiminished. To stand in Pompeii today is to feel time collapse. You walk streets where laughter once echoed. You enter rooms where meals were shared. You see faces preserved in plaster, their fear still etched across centuries. The past does not feel distant. It feels immediate, alive, pressing against your heart. The eruption of 79 CE is not a story of the past alone. It is a mirror held up to humanity, a reminder of our vulnerability and our resilience. Pompeii before the disaster was a city of life. Pompeii during the eruption was a city of death. Pompeii after rediscovery is a city of memory. Its story endures because it belongs not only to Rome, but to all of us. It tells us who we are, what we fear, and how we hope to be remembered. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE is more than an ancient catastrophe. It is a timeless narrative of destruction and preservation. In the ash, we see terror and loss. In the ruins, we see resilience and memory. In the plaster casts, we see ourselves. The people of Pompeii did not know they would be remembered, yet they are remembered more vividly than most of their contemporaries. Their lives, interrupted in an instant, became eternal through tragedy. The lesson of Pompeii is not despair, but humility. Nature holds the power to humble empires. Time holds the power to bury civilizations, yet memory has the power to bring them back. As long as Pompeii stands, its story will not fade. It will remain a monument to life, death, and the fragile beauty of being human.